Hi, my name's John. I'm going to be talking to you about modernizing and upgrading your .NET apps with Visual Studio. For some reason, we have two slides of the same look. First of all, there are two terms that we use kind of interchangeably and mix back and forth. So I want to clarify them, partly because they've confused me over time. I actually had to have another PM spell it out for me recently. So we talk about modernizing and upgrading. And the official terms that we seem to be using now on the .NET team, for modernizing, we're thinking more about application patterns and specifically things like cloud enabling your apps. So getting ready to migrate to Azure, take advantage of distributed applications, take advantage of all the Azure, and cloud-ready things especially, right? And then upgrading is talking about, just version bumps, moving from .NET Framework to modern .NET, moving from your apps that may be on .NET 3 or .NET Core 3 or .NET Core whatever versions, or even .NET 6, moving .NET 6 to 8 and 9, right? So I'm going to try to use those terms right, but it's important to kind of think of these as sort of two separate, very related problems, because obviously it's a little harder to modernize the patterns without, when you're running on an older version of .NET, but you're not blocked from it. So there are some things where you may say, hey, I cannot upgrade this application, but I can still modernize it and move to the cloud, take advantage of some other things. So that is concept number one before I dive into any slides, all right? So first of all, let's talk about updating or upgrading .NET, all right? So I probably don't need to, you're hearing this talk, you're interested, you're invested, right? I probably don't need to sell it too much, but let's talk about some of the whys. So one, obviously performance improvements. There are some enormous performance improvements all the way up and down the stack. There are things like in the intrinsics, things like, just in the .NET runtime, it's hardware optimized. It's got much better memory management, all sorts of things. When you're talking about web applications, the hosting model in modern ASP.NET is just completely light years ahead of where we were before, right? So that is a big deal. Up and down the stack, performance improvements are just enormous. And they go between versions even. So if you're on .NET 8 and you're like, should I go to .NET 9? Yeah, you really should. So, and this is an interesting kind of, I'm monologuing on the first slide, but what are you gonna do? It's a 75-minute session, so. My personal philosophy is I recommend going with every .NET version. And I know some people are like, we go every 2 years, we go long-term support. I understand there are enterprise reasons, but my recommendation is if you can update every version, those incremental updates are going to be much easier. When you're skipping 2 or 3 versions in your .NET upgrades or more years, there's multiple different breaking changes. There's potentially you're going from unsupported NuGet libraries. You're kind of delaying the pain, but you're making it worse. So that's my kind of general recommendation. My background is I worked in industry for over 10 years before working at Microsoft. So I've done the pain, I've been there, I've worked in industry and enterprise and financial and all those companies. And I definitely just my gut feel and my what I've seen going well for people is do regular small upgrades instead of big bang upgrades. All right, getting back to it, performance. Security, obviously security fixes. We do patch updates for all the .NETs. .NET Framework is supported. There are versions of .NET Framework is supported, but .NET Core, say 3.0 is not going to be supported, right? So you want to be on a supported version, but there are just more modern protocols and better authentication things and all those sort of things. You're going to be getting the best security on the newest .NET. All right. New features and tooling. This is huge for me, honestly. Every time I've been with .NET since the betas, right? I've been doing .NET I've gone through it. Every .NET was like, wow, this one's cool. And then now for me, going from working mostly with .NET 9, .NET 10, trying to install these demos on my machine that are running on Framework 4.8. And it's like, oh my gosh, IIS Express and the database won't load and all this stuff, right? So if you are working on multiple different versions, the newer ones are just so much simpler to work with, right? And that goes for features, but also for tooling, of course. There are some things where I was talking to Mads today, and he's like, man, we got customers that can't use the newest Visual Studio because they're supporting older applications, right? So moving along and getting on the newest .NET gives you that. Compliance and support, sure. And then also community and ecosystem. This is a big one too, right? If you're using NuGet packages, there are NuGet packages that just aren't around. There are people that aren't answering questions for these older application types, right? So it's in terms of just being productive and being integrated and also like, honestly, a job, for job skills, you want to be on the newer .NET. I probably didn't need to sell any of that to you, but these are just, things to think through. Okay, modernizing. So again, upgrade, just version bumps. Modernizing is this kind of newer patterns and especially being cloud ready, right? So taking advantage of the new patterns. This is stuff like making your applications, more testable, making your applications just kind of able to take advantage of distributed application architectures, better scale, all that. Well, there goes the scale one off the list too, right? Offload cross-cutting functionality. This is a big deal for things like being able to, like a lot of the older patterns you'll see with .NET applications is more monolithic, and it's really a lot more difficult to kind of split things up and scale up independently. Attract and retain talent. I already mentioned this one here, but you want to be on the newest .NET personally. You want to be on the newest patterns personally, but then also a lot of you may be like tech leads, and as you're thinking about hiring and retaining talent in your companies, they're going to want to be working on newer stuff as well. And then cost-wise, this is a big deal for me with the modernization for working on cloud. Being able to scale down is as important as scaling up. And I remember working in financial companies, where we were waiting a long time to get this enormous SQL server, right? We were going to get this huge beefy machine, and it was probably running at 10% capacity most of the time, but it was so hard to get the approval to get the big machine that we wanted to just get it done once and for all, right? And so it's very easy to, like, when you're working on older patterns, monolithic, larger servers, that sort of thing, you're wasting money by not being able to scale down as well. All right, so I'm going to be talking to you in two kind of sections today. One is the current state of things up till, like beginning of this year-ish, the mature tools you've had around for a while, which still do serve some purposes. So Upgrade Assistant and Azure Migrate. Upgrade Assistant, honestly, I really like it's really kind of underappreciated. It's really grown over the years, and it's partly grown as a result of Microsoft's consulting services. Microsoft's like the services we bring in to help people as they're working through large deployments and updates, and it basically evolved from these patterns. And so that is one. And then Azure Migrate is another for, again, that is the modernization tool that we have. So let me see. I want to talk, first of all, this is a little segue about why, or one of the patterns I really like about Upgrade Assistant. And the idea there is that some of the tools I'm going to be showing you later on are kind of more Big Bang Update. Big Bang Update is amazing if you can do it. It's very common in enterprise that you can't do that. You can't do a rewrite in a day. You may have, very large applications. We talk to customers with, tens of millions of lines of code, right? And like decades of investment in their code. So, every time, somebody is like, hey, this is a super quick 5-minute demo. And it's like in the back of your mind, you're like, yeah, but I can't do that, right? So I understand. One of the common patterns is the Strangler fig pattern. And the idea is basically that you split out parts of your application so that you can update bits at a time. And the Strangler fig is actually like in nature, there's a Strangler fig that strangles out a plant or a tree, and basically like at the end of it, the one, I forget what it is, but one is left and the original tree is gone, right? So the idea here is that you are taking this original application and you're just kind of building on, you're replacing parts at a time until the original is ready, is hollowed out and you're ready to remove. And this really cool pattern that exists here is that you can use YARP. Anyone use YARP? Know what YARP is? Heard of YARP? YARP stands for yet another reverse proxy. And so I'll be showing you this in action. You got to love programmer names, right? But I think we really needed a YARP like mascot T-shirt, the whole thing. But so I really love the idea of basically having two side-by-side applications, and you're just slowly moving stuff over. And so for ASP applications, this is an amazing thing. I worked for years on these like guidance things where we would say, here's how to rewrite your entire app. And then we saw that customers were like, I can't do this, right? And so YARP and this upgrade assistant approach is a way to get around that. Okay. And so the general idea, you start with your existing state, everything's going to the initial application. Then you say, okay, I hook in this proxy and all the requests are going to a new application that does nothing. All the new application does is forward stuff through this proxy to the old application, which handles every single request. And then it continues to use the old business logic. Then over time, let me see, we start moving, what was I doing there? I forget. We basically then, here's the thing, there's also these special adapters that can hook in. So if we've got special custom logic, things that can't be moved to the newer application, they can still continue to connect to the old application. These are things like shims and like ways that like fancy ways to connect between them. And then basically over time, you're just basically moving this logic out of here into here, bit at a time. And then you're finally ready to say, hey, there's nothing left to the old app, and you remove it. So that's the general kind of pattern there. All right, I think in this, I'm ready to show some demos. So first of all, I'm going to show starting with an old friend of mine, MVC Music Store. When I first started at Microsoft, they said, hey, we need a demo app. We need this MVC application. Next thing I knew, I was like working directly with Scott Guthrie. This was a while back, but writing this thing and getting code reviews from Scott Guthrie is terrifying. But so anyways, it was really cool to like build this application and have people over the years say, hey, here's, I learned MVC from this. I also learned a lot about MVC through this. So here we have just a standard traditional store application. This is, I believe, the MVC 5 version of it. And so we'll spin it on up. And by the way, I'm happy for yelled out interrupting questions if you want. I'll take questions at the end too, but we have 75 minutes. It's the last day. I'm kind of flexible here. So. All right. And again, the thing for me is always like, oh man, how do I set up local DB again? Like, why isn't IIS connecting? What's happening here? Yeah. What is, okay, I'm sure it's going. Computers get shy when they're in front of crowds. There it is. Okay. So, here we've got, I don't know, your basic store, right? This has login, it has an admin. All right, so let's go on and let's upgrade assistant in. I'm going to show you a cooler way. Some of these things work amazing. Some things work even better in a newer tool I'm going to show you in a second. So foreshadowing. Okay, we are going to say right-click, upgrade. Now there's two things we actually can do. And one is we can start with an assessment. So I can right-click on the solution and I can say, if I right-click on the solution and click upgrade, then I get this thing where it can go and analyze and create a report. So this is handy if you want to convince your bosses or like just get an honest assessment of, hey, how tough is it going to be for me to upgrade my application? So an important thing, I think, you can just analyze the source code. I recommend hitting the binary dependencies too, because a lot of the time that is where more of the difficulty is. Not in this app, but most real projects have a lot of, NuGet packages, and then those NuGet packages depend on other NuGet packages, and that's where you can run into more trouble. So go through, do an upgrade report. And then what's nice with this is that this is actually can be exported as a HTML report that's got this fancy thing that you can send off to your bosses and stuff. So here you can say, all right, here's what's involved, here's the different issues. You can get an idea of which ones you have to fix and which ones are optional or recommended. And then also it even goes through and does stuff like story points. So here you can see like APIs available in a NuGet package, like different things that are like, obviously if an API doesn't exist, I've got to fix that. So you can go through and use this for some tracking. Okay. So now we've done that. Bosses say, okay, let's go for it. I don't want to save changes. We're just going to YOLO upgrade. So I'm going to, first of all, I just remembered I got to do a thing first, which is I have to delete the old one because otherwise it's going to be unhappy. So yep. So I have this in a Git repo and I roll back, I revert my changes every time, but it doesn't delete the previous upgrade. So, all right. So now we are going to right click, upgrade. So we have some options here, and there are, I can do a side-by-side incremental upgrade. I can also do some other neat things, which I'm not going to go into right now, but these are also super useful. So one is I can just convert this to an SDK style project. So the older CS proj, these huge things that list every single included file in them, I can convert that. I can also move to central package management. Anyone using that? Okay, not near enough people are using central package management. It is, when you've got a solution, you've got multiple different projects in it, and they can all have this, similar, they can all have dependencies on the same NuGet package, but different versions. And you end up getting all kinds of like conflicting things. So central package management moves that to the solution level. And it says, these are the versions we're using in this application or in this entire solution for, say, system tech JSON or whatever, right? And you can essentially kind of pin those at the solution level. So that's super handy. What I'm going to be showing here is this side-by-side incremental upgrade. So I did something wrong. Sometimes I do, I'd use zoom it and then I use the wrong thing. Okay, so we'll try it again. Upgrade in place. Okay, so we want to do a new project. Call it core. All right, let's go with 9. Finish. Now this project doesn't have too many controllers, but it has some. So it's going to go through and it's going to discover those. So we look through and it says, okay, here's all the different things. And it's setting up in Music Store Core. It's setting up down at the end this Yark proxy. So that YARP proxy is this map forwarder magic. And what that's saying is it's setting up a catch-all route, and it's saying anything that, so it's just completely URL based. So it'll say, okay, if I can handle a request to /products or /account /about, whatever, if it can be handled in the core project, handle it there. We're done. Otherwise, if we can't handle it, forward it back to the original MVC Music Store .NET Framework 4a version. At the beginning, this project here has no controllers, does nothing. So every single request just gets proxied through. Fortunately, YARP is very highly performant. This is running in process. This is not like some other proxy out on the server. This is going just directly through. So everything's just funneling right through. Okay. So now, if we go back to the upgrade, okay, it says upgrading selected components. So now it shows, okay, this is done. And now we can go through and we can start upgrading specific controllers, because all it did was set up the framework for the upgrade, right? There's nothing actually going on here. Now we can go in and we can start picking controllers apart. We can say, all right, let's take a controller. Let's take the home controller to start with. So we'll go to home and we'll say upgrade. All right, the home controller is very simple, although it does have some display on it because you saw there were some called out things on there. We'll run through, okay, this is good. So basically it's going through. Now MVC, you may wonder, why aren't you doing this for me for web forms? Well, because web forms doesn't map cleanly to ASP.NET Core, right? Also, MVC is a very, there's some very clear patterns, and the MVC patterns really, I mean, there have been improvements and changes, but this is something where programmatically you can very clearly map things over. So, all right, upgrading components. I think it says to say we're done. Lapse time complete. Okay. So I don't know. Now we could run this. Now what I should have done is run it for you right without upgrading a controller, right? Because everything would have worked perfectly. Everything goes right back through. Now what you'll see here is basically an advertisement for the next tool I'm going to be showing you soon. Because we have mapped over the application code, but we haven't mapped, there's all these other little things in the code, in the views itself, right? There's JavaScript, there's CSS, there's bundling, there's all this stuff that was pretty neat like 12 years ago, but is not, those JavaScript files, some of them are like super old versions or not even like being pulled over. And that's where we're going to start running into some of this, right? So now we hit build errors. I have done different, well, that's a good one. I've done different versions of this demo before. Sometimes I'll do the happy path demo where I do file new project MVC. And that actually maps over and runs pretty darn smooth, okay? But it's not real world at all, right? Because there's no database, there's no like actual complexity. And so I'll try and run this one more time and see if see what the error was. Oh, there's not, okay, there's build errors. All right. What I normally do, and we have a Learn document that walks you through this. I have mapped over a controller. The new controller is actually working, but there's other stuff like I've got to go through because that home page actually was displaying data. So now I need to start going through and like doing the hard actual business specific work of this, right? So, however, what I should have done is, or I guess what I should, like when you first set it up, that runs. When I mapped over the first controller, it breaks, and this is the job, right? This is what you get paid for, is now you fix these bugs, right? And so this is the programming part of the upgrade. What's nice is I'm not fixing 1,000 bugs across an entire ginormous application. I'm fixing one controller. I'm fixing the entities that are being referenced in it, right? So that is essentially how you do those updates. Okay, So, and again, like, let me pop over just for context. If I go to modernize ASP.NET learn module, I think this might get it. Yeah. So this example walks you through the process of doing it, and it works with, it's more of a file new project, but some of the stuff towards the end is that stuff I was talking about where, okay, it can map over quite a bit, right? It'll map over your controllers, it converts things one at a time, but then you have to do all these things like static files. You have to mess with, okay, the CSS is in the place, the HTML is linking to the JavaScript, which is now in a new folder because it's been 10 years and we've moved folders around, right? So that is, so I gave you the real world, not super happy path upgrade assistant demo. However, the upgrade assistant is amazing because it lets you work on those page by page things. It also, another thing you may not think about is it works with stuff like web forms because it's just at the URL level. So you can rewrite, because you've got YARP coming in, here I've got my web forms app underneath, requests are coming in, every single request that comes in still gets proxied to that web forms app, right? And now I say, okay, requests to orders, I'll write an order controller in my ASP.NET Core app, and now that orders thing just starts picking up those requests, right? So you can incrementally upgrade from a web forms framework app to a .NET 9 MVC app, or Blazor app or Razor Pages or whatever app, like, because you're just rewriting at the URL level. All right. So like I said, I intentionally gave you the it's awesome, but there are complications side to it. All right. So now let's go back over into the slides and we'll talk about another bit of real world complications you run into, which is system web adapters, or system web and then system web adapters. So a very common thing that you'll run into is, hey, I can rewrite a lot of stuff, but there are things that fundamentally have changed between framework and core. And some of these are things like session state, right? Or HTTP, like just anything in system web is fundamentally different, but specifically things like session state and context. So there's a really cool package, system web adapters. And what this allows you to do, it sets up a proxy. I'm giving you the complicated, if this sounds like something you don't care about, you don't have to deal with it, right? But I've given a version of this talk many times and a lot of people are like, but what about? So this is the answer to that, okay? You have your authentication system is running in your main app. You want to rewrite parts of it at a time. How do you keep your authentication state the same? How do you deal with the problem of, hey, there's different cookies? How do you keep that stuff in sync? So there's this kind of magical thing. The system web adapters basically runs in both of your applications, and it has a SignalR proxy or a SignalR connection going back and forth that can share connection state. There's also shims and stuff inside. So like if you are using HTTP context, it creates a shim that you can start rewriting your code in your ASP.NET Core app, and it's able to, like, you can still use that code. And a lot of the time it like wraps things in the newer modern way of doing things, right? So that's the solution there. That is a whole, like, that is a whole thing. There's actually like a 5-hour series, a YouTube playlist that we've set up where Mike Roussos walks through doing that. So if you're interested in that, I can show the thing. Actually, I'll just do it because. Okay. So let's go to Mike Roussos, modernize YouTube. So this is a video series, and like I said, I think it's about 5 hours worth. And Mike is a genius at, like, I forget all this stuff. I've written this kind of code and I've just forgotten a lot of it. And I love how he's able to keep all the intrinsics of very old versions of ASP.NET Framework and then the modernist, core releases in his head. So he walks through all this stuff and covers some of the stuff about how do we actually share session state and how do you deal with login issues and that sort of stuff. So it's that plugged in. There we go. Okay, good. So, all right, let's go back into there. Let's close this out. Then I kind of have a bit of whiplash because I'm used to 60-minute talks, and just previously I gave a 20-minute like lightning, whatever, fast focus talk, and now this is 75 minutes. So I start at 1:30, so we go to 2:45, I believe. So, all right. So we talked about Upgrade Assistant. Pretty cool. Gives you the opportunity to rewrite stuff one URL at a time. So that definitely works. Yeah. One other thing I do want to mention is Upgrade Assistant also works for desktop apps. So like Windows Forms applications. There's a lot of good reasons for upgrading your Windows Forms apps. So I know a lot of, like, they're out there. Lots of, like, we don't talk about Windows Forms a lot, but it definitely still works. We have a really amazing team that's actually continuing to add features onto Windows Forms. And by updating your applications that are running on Windows Forms, like, you get better deployment flexibility. The reason for this is on .NET Framework, you're stuck on one version per machine, right? So you get stuck in this thing where it's like, we'd love to update this app, but we can't break all these other people. We can't move different versions, right? All that stuff. So by being able to deploy at the self-contained exe level or even MSIX, then you're able to kind of separate that out. So this really helps if you're in a large enterprise shop that's got to support a lot of, like line of business WinForm apps, right? Also being able to take advantage of modern features, accessibility, all the kind of newest UI enhancements, even dark mode. And then also Windows Forms and WPF are open source. So being able to kind of participate in that, to log issues, to like be able to work with the platform stacks in a modern way is pretty cool. And like I mentioned, there's all these other great new features. Again, how many folks here are regularly working or do at least, support Windows Forms apps? Anyone? Yep. See, all right. We don't talk about it. It's totally still there. They're totally supported, and keep them up to date. Run on the newest .NET and be happy. So, so we've got dark mode, lots better performance. There's support for a lot of new features, things like the Windows task dialog. There's also this command bindings is great. So if you've got like the older patterns kind of pushed you to putting all your code in one giant file, right? And making it pretty difficult to test Windows Forms apps. And using command bindings, you can use this MVVM style coding pattern, and that allows you to write actual tests. So that's also, like, you can evolve, even if you are working to rewrite your application and maybe move application stacks. First, being able to write it with MVVM style, then you can unit test it, and that makes you a lot more secure as you move forward. All right. So, I have a demo that I struggled with today, and I couldn't get working either on this machine or on my dev box. I do want to show a YouTube-ish video of it, and it makes me sad to do it. No, that's not it.
What's going on? Yep. This is just...
Okay. It is over in this one. There it is. So this is a demo that I gave earlier this year, and it's on my home computer where it totally worked. So I'm going to mute it, and I'll just talk through what I did here. Okay, so the idea is I took actually is this playing? think it's play. I went and grabbed some code from an MSDN magazine article or a sample code from 2008. This is a Windows Forms app. It's a data grid view. And this is basically exploring through the Northwind database. So again, same pattern, right click, upgrade, .NET 9. I go through the upgrade assistant. It goes, actually upgrades, like I found WinForms upgrades pretty darn smooth. So this just kind of ripped through everything. I had to fix maybe one or two things. I end up, like this is a relatively small application. The original version is just paging through a data grid view over one table. So I wanted to see two things. One, how quickly can I upgrade it? And then once I do upgrade it, can I add in some modern features? So yeah, that's neat. It's running on .NET 9. What about, could I actually use, say, AI? Sure I can, right? Because I can just use Microsoft extensions for AI. It's .NET code. By moving to the newest .NET, I can easily take advantage of all the newest features. My friend Jordan there. So then we pop this open. I fix some features, honestly, by just removing some of the forms that I'm not using. So then I go in here and first of all, I need to make sure that I need to update some NuGet packages. This is definitely part of the upgrade process, right? So you get on the newest framework and then you're going to want to make sure you're updating your NuGet packages as well. And I may do a super quick skip forward because I want to make sure this is fast. Okay, we update. I had to update my SQL client stuff. Then in the application, update the thing. Okay. So now, instead of just paging through the data grid view, which is what the original one does. So this is all I've done is upgraded. Now I want some AI in it, right? So I think I just kind of copy and paste some code in. And I use MEAI, and what I want to be able to do is actually run some more advanced reports. So I drop MEAI in. I set an AI key. I say I want to use GPT-4.1 as an iChat client. And then my query here is some stuff like, show me the top 5 employees with total sales. I had one that said, find me like employees with declining monthly average sales from 1997 to 98. So gonna bust them. So anyhow, we go through and write some of these queries that are actually relatively complex, right? So now the wacky idea I came up with was to use AI to write SQL for me. So actually, there's not like a chat interface on this WinForms app, but instead, when I run this now, it's going to show a dropdown. And now on that dropdown, I say like, hey, go get me any of those things. But it's actually free text. So I could say, find me all products that, I might use in the winter or whatever, right? And it's or, like AI sort of things. So what it does here is it comes up with the SQL query and then fills. So now my data grid view, like all of a sudden blew up with a bunch of features. This is like not much code. And just the general idea that the reason I'm pointing this out is, number one, you can, with Upgrade Assistant, you can upgrade your existing WinForms apps. You can be not only running on the newest .NET, but then you can much more easily jump into the newest, coolest features that are available for .NET developers, right? So that was my like kind of fun little playtime. What can I do with some code from 2008? So there we go. All right. There's also Azure Migrate. Now, there's two things I'm going to talk to you about with Azure Migrate. One is there is an existing Azure Migrate. Like I can right click on my application and do right click Azure Migrate. And that works with .NET and Java, which is pretty cool. I'm going to show you the fanciest, newest GitHub-powered one in a bit. So I'm going to move through that, but the existing kind of AppCat thing already does that as well. So I'm going to move past that. What I want to talk about next is I think kind of funnily named, but very awesome new things we have, which are the GitHub Copilot tool. So there's a GitHub Copilot app modernization upgrade for .NET. So this is the one that breaks my rule I said earlier, where when we say modernize, we're talking about patterns. When we say upgrade, we're talking about version upgrade. So this one is actually, the last one wins, is upgrade. So this is kind of the solution for where I showed the music store. Like, yeah, this is awesome. It's a good pattern. We're doing this YARP thing. But then we actually have to fix these bugs, right? We have to, okay, it doesn't compile, fix this issue, fix this issue. Now, if you're like me, when you start getting these bugs, I'm using Copilot all the time to fix the issues. So now, and a lot of time it's repetitive, like, okay, that fixed, now this needs to get fixed now. And you just kind of hack on it until it works, right? I mean, that's how a lot of upgrade scenarios work. So what if we could do something like that was integrated with Visual Studio, that was integrated with GitHub Copilot? So that's what this is. So it's dependency aware. It is more structured than just opening a project and saying, help me upgrade this project, right? We actually do want to create a plan. We do have some patterns that are successful for upgrading applications that we know about. So we want to kind of give some structure and use Copilot within that. Now, there is a loop, which is this whole break fix thing, right? I don't want to be doing the entire break fix thing. I want Copilot to work, but I don't want to just turn Copilot loose for a while and find out it's created a whole new login system for me or whatever, right? So we want to have it actually ask me questions and kind of figure out things together. So there is a very much like loop where it says, hey, what branch do you want to use? How do you want to do this? And so you kind of work through it. And then it is integrated with Git. So the meaning there is it actually will work on a branch with commits. And so that's really useful for traceability. It's not just hey, I did it, and then you're like, okay, what all changed? You can actually go back through and look at the commits that have reasonable names on them within this branch, right? So it's done in the way that you would expect. If you hired a vendor to upgrade your application, it looks kind of like that, right? So that's the general idea. All right, so let's do this one. So this is over on my dev box. I love dev box. These are the tools that I'm showing you. So this is a Visual Studio extension. It's I would grab it. It's amazing. So it's been around for some time with support only for, or not only, but support for modern version updates. So .NET, I believe, 3 and later, .NET. So .NET Core 3X through .NET 8. However, it now supports framework. So let's be crazy and do that. It is at a preview, and it's definitely like we're looking for your, okay, let's see if I can get to this. That was in, I have like 90 different demos. So is this the one? And we see framework. I believe, no, I don't think that's it. Okay, we'll find it. See server and hey, work. This might work. No. Okay. Let's go Copilot. No. Let's go. I'm a big fan of this GitHub desktop app. I don't know if, I know it's not fancy and it's not as cool. I definitely like typing the commands when I remember them and the autocomplete and all that. But I definitely, no shame. I love this tool because it's great for being able to visually go through and work with stuff. It also is a great way to kind of look at, hey, here's all my repos I've got. This is a dev box, so it doesn't have a huge amount, but it's just great for managing stuff. So here I've got this ASP.NET MVC test app. Now, where I got this from was, if we go to upgrade, I don't know. It's that same repo that I showed you earlier, that that module in the Microsoft Learn documentation where you walk through upgrading an app. So that's where I got it. This is your standard thing. Now, here's my this was, I don't know, I just think this is funny. I can't get this to run under IIS Express .NET framework. Like, it just, the thing keeps screwing up, and it won't run on the it won't run under IIS, etc. Like, this machine basically just won't run IIS and won't run framework stuff great. That's okay, because we're gonna fix this problem by upgrading with GitHub Copilot. So let's do it. So here it says, okay, here's some stuff. Now, the way this tool works is if I go over in the corner, I can just type stuff in, which is fine. Or here's some like obvious things I might pick. So I'm going to say upgrade to a newer .NET version. So we'll do that. So I say upgrade to a newer .NET version. Yes. So now it's going to ask me, which version do you want to upgrade to? Okay, supported versions. Okay, so I'm going to go with 9, kind of middle of the road on this one. Okay, so this is what I was talking about with the way that the Git integration works. Is it's definitely going to talk through what is your source branch, and next it's going to say what is your target branch. Okay, I've got a backup one here. It says I propose using that. I'm going to say no. Let's call the new branch amazing upgrade. Okay. So just showing like you can go through and you have control over whatever you want to use, right? So now it's on that branch, and it's going to start going through and analyzing the project, and it just works systematically through. Now, this is a combo of simple and yet more complex than you'd think, because this project, this is not that whole MVC music store. This is essentially the file new project thing, but there are a lot of things you don't think about that it's going to go through and solve for me. So this takes a couple of minutes, and I think it's pretty interesting. First of all, is it creates an upgrade plan. So what I love about this is Markdown. This lets me like say I needed to run this by the team, get architectural approval, whatever. Like I can read through this, but I can also like just edit it. So I could say, okay, no, that doesn't work. You know, I want to make sure that we're using, you know, my special naming standards or whatever, right? So, but it does go through and it says, here's what we're going to do. Here's the changes we need to make. Here's all the stuff, right? Okay, sounds great. Continue with upgrade. Got my friend Claude Sonnet 4 on the job. So
use the Markdown.
It does.
So you would make changes to the work.
Yes. And I did think of that, but I can't think of like an obvious thing that's not going to totally break my demo, you know? I did think about like renaming projects along the way, but so it comes up with, but yeah, so you do have control. That's one of the real kind of ways that you have control over the whole thing. And you have a larger project or a larger solution. It's going to come up with a big plan, and you go back through and you say, no, this is our internal NuGet standard. We're going to use this specific project or whatever, right? Okay, so now it goes through, finalize the plan, and now it's just kind of walking through. So it looks at support, I believe, and as you're going through, it shows a progress log, but also along the way, you've got the changes. So we have just completed, like if I go into this, okay, well, that's a planning step. Let's see what's going on here. Progress, so it's upgrading things. Do we have any changes yet? No. All right. Soon we will. All right. Now, when I went through this before, and I honestly don't know technically why like sometimes things seem to work differently. When I went through this before, it would try and edit files and sometimes it couldn't, and it made me do them. Sometimes it would say I couldn't edit this file, and I would look at it and then it had made the change and I just said, okay, looks good. So it's an interactive kind of process, but it's great to be able to kind of like supervise it, see the stuff it's doing. There it's saying, okay, made all these changes to these project properties, right? So I can go through. And then also, it's like I mentioned before, like the package modifications is a big deal. So looking through and seeing what the actual like changes are. And these, I believe at this state, are still just upgrading project or packages. Later on, we're going to run into thing where it's going to say this package like no longer exists, or we need to make bigger changes. All right. So it runs through some stuff. Oh, I've switched off of that. Let's go back to the chat. Okay. All right, so it's gone through, it's reading files. Now here's the stuff that normally takes a while to fix when I go through the other one. Like it's a painful demo for me to do actually, because going through and changing like the layout, changing the scripts, changing the references for the CSS and JavaScript, it's just tedious, especially because these older framework ones use bundles. And it's like a different, it was the ASP.NET bundling, which is just a different style of doing things. So this is actually being a lot smoother than the last time I ran through this, because before, like bundle config and some of these, it actually was like, I can't edit this, can you do this? And it would like keep making me do things. Let me see. So it's saying, so here, by the way, it's also run into things like you see that error kind of, or that red X on the left, that's saying, hey, Antler doesn't work. We've got some problems, right? And then it goes and it fixes it. So this is that whole kind of break fix sort of thing where it kind of just continues to work through stuff. Let me see. Are you still going? Okay, still working. I just, I don't want to be a pain. We got people watching here. Okay. So now it's going to go through and do the things like upgrade global ASAX. And here it's doing things like moving the routing and stuff out of global ASAX and moving that into program CS. So we're just moving that logic and our configuration, our setup stuff. So that's cool. All right. So here is maybe, so far I've been pretty lucky. I don't want to jinx it, but it's going through and it's actually able to edit these files this time. And you can actually watch like, okay, here is the global ASAX. So like you can see it, okay, there it's been moving things out, like it removed the bundles. Pretty soon it's going to remove out the routes. And it made the edits to layout, excuse me. Yeah. So these were ones that like previous references went to, well, it's a small type there, but previous references went to bundles jQuery, right? And now the newer pattern is like tilde scripts, etc. So, all right. And let's see how it's doing on, okay. So here is, this program CS file didn't exist before, right? This is our entire This is all the stuff that needs to happen to configure and run all the middleware, all that stuff.
Okay.
So just moving all the logic over. Now we're moving over, updating the controllers, changing things. Pretty soon it's going to go like change these over to use iAction result instead of action result. All right. So this is, everything here has been very straightforward. If you have some sort of logic thing where there is an actual real question to ask, it'll interrupt and it'll say, hey, I'm not sure how you want me to do this, or this thing is ambiguous, etc. So what I love here is, well, I do like the classic upgrade assistant, and I still partly recommended it. And I checked in with PMs, and we decided still worth showing partly for that YARP-based side-by-side long-term incremental update. So if you've got a larger project, still can be worth setting that up. What I would do maybe is start with that and then come over into this and say, okay, now let's update the MVC application and be able to kind of work through it now that you've got the YARP thing set up. All right, so here we're going through. Now, I don't know about you folks, like sometimes it's funny watching like the amazing amount of stuff that Copilot can do, and then it gets really stuck like editing a text file with like 5 lines in it, and it's like mangling the words. It's like, what are you doing? So this is one where sometimes it'll try and then it'll give up and it'll say like, hey, can you make this edit for me? But we're like, I would say 80, 90% done on this. And I'll take a look at our progress. I think I can close some of these. Did I have a question? Oh, you have a question. Okay.
Hinted that there are these the Prima individual studio.
Did I hint that, or did we hint that in like?
I thought you mentioned at the very beginning that Matt said that.
What I meant there was there are some, I can't remember what, but there are some things that you can't, I don't know that in the newest visual, like I'm not saying the Visual Studio Next or whatever, but say VS 2022, I don't know if it can open every project type from really old framework things, right? So that's more of the thing there. So let me just ask here, are you still working? Sometimes I like to just check in. Okay. See, it said it was working, but I think it was like on a break. I mean, that's okay. It's working hard, but I like how it's like, yeah, I'm totally working here, It's like,
But how do you?
All right. So I think we're really kind of in the home stretch. This is the part where it's just doing some break fix stuff. And it's looking and it's saying, finding things like, hey, your namespace is slightly off, or, like, hey, this new Git package that was no longer supported, we removed it, or, like your JSON handling has changed or whatever, right? So we're in the, I don't want to jinx things, but the very final like validation steps. Yeah.
What was the old version? And then
the old version, I believe on this one was framework 481.
Oh,
yeah.
Office grew up. That's it.
To .NET 9. Yeah. Yeah.
Question. When you do the upgrade, do they create a new project, a separate project, or just upgrade on the same?
Yeah, great question. So the question was, is it upgrading in place or is it doing a side-by-side? This one is doing directly in place. It's overriding the code.
Is there an option that says don't override it, create a separate?
There isn't for this. So that is, that would be, I'll ask the folks on, because I think when I talk to the PMs, we're looking at kind of merging these experiences together, and there's still some value in that doing the side by side, right? So what this does that does make it simpler is that it works on a different branch, and so you're not. And the experiment that I haven't tried yet is starting with Upgrade Assistant and then trying to do this. I don't know if this would work, but you know what I'm saying? Upgrading my framework after I've done the Upgrade Assistant.
So you're saying that if you create a separate branch, not on the setup, say I want to upgrade my main branch, they will create a separate branch?
It will create a separate branch for you. Yeah. Yep. Question?
Is that new branch create? Is that in this markdown that it's specifying at the beginning, or like if you put it in there, like I want to create this as a new project and keep the existing stuff and like in this project plan markdown?
That's a great question. I don't know if it would. I don't know, honestly.
Because I've used this pattern before too, like create a markdown that's kind of a project.
Yes.
In it and execute your plan. So
yeah.
That's why.
I don't know how that totally makes sense. And I don't know if it does that. And if anyone didn't hear, this whole pattern of using a markdown file for like planning work is really powerful with AI. Like I do that now with everything. Is I'll say like, first I'll collaborate with Copilot and I'll say, write a plan in Markdown and I tell it to use checklists, the GitHub flavored Markdown checklist. And then I'll iterate on that plan with it for a while. Say, no, I don't like that. First do this and make sure there's testing here and blah, blah, blah. And then say, okay, proceed with phase 1. Okay, proceed with phase 2. So that sort of thing. So that is also a great question on there, is if you can kind of specify the different branches. I'm not sure how much control you have in that. So I haven't like pushed the limits on this yet. But remember that this didn't even launch before because I couldn't get IIS working and there were other just weird things going on. So now I've fixed my bug by basically just upgrading to .NET 9. So this is file new project, and I honestly would have shown you the MVC music store on here, but just installing the database and all that, getting it working on this machine, making IIS work so that I could even test it is the blocker. Like the actual upgrade, not that hard, right? So that's the kind of fun demo with that. We're at 10-ish minutes left, so let's go into. Yep. So this is something that, customers are using. Apparently FMGs wow, this is just, they got moved. But yeah, so both internally, like Teams, Xbox, we use .NET a ton at Microsoft. And we try to, like, we do these stories on the .NET blog where we'll talk through like, hey, here's a team that upgraded from .NET 6 to .NET 8 or 9, and they saw these huge changes and these improvements, right? And then also, as a result of them doing it, they'll tell us, hey, this didn't work, fix it, and so that's part of how .NET keeps getting better. So this is supported with ASP.NET Core, Windows Forms, WPF, workers, consoles, and libraries. And like, I don't know. I've had great success with it so far. It's definitely like we have like the original supported scenario, and actually even when you look on the marketplace thing, it says, hey, we don't support framework, but you just saw me do framework. So it's in preview state. We're very much looking for feedback. So this is a great time to go in, and like you'll notice, I think, well, when I looked at it, it had some negative reviews, which is great because well, that helps us get better, right? So you want to go through and you find out like what works for you and what doesn't. Again, because it's working on a different branch, like it's not going to break your, like you should have your stuff in source control anyways, but being able to work on a different branch and having all the commits, you can go through and trace things back and say, hey, everything worked up until this point. It's also because the way it does commits, it's actually built so that you can stop. You can say, I'm done for today, come back tomorrow or whatever. You come back later and say, hey, let's continue with that upgrade. And it's able to look at its progress, look at the commits, and kind of pick back up. All right, so that is the upgrade scenario. We'll wrap up by talking a bit more about AI-assisted modernization. This is that same approach going to the modernization. So Yeah, modernization definitely is difficult. There's it's very complicated, and especially when you're trying to reason through moving things to Azure, a lot of the time that involves some significant like re-architecture sorts of things. It also involves working with different SDKs, different kind of connection patterns, et cetera. It's just boring grunt work that you have to do, right? And then it's also like it's disconnected because it's in a lot of different tools. Like I mentioned, different SDKs. You're looking at different docs. I'll just show you. This is from our amazing team in China, helped with this video. So it has a very clearly AI powered voice at the beginning, but we're
looking for a faster way to migrate your .NET apps to Azure and make them more secure and performant? GitHub Copilot app modernization for .NET offers an AI-powered approach with built-in best practices and a streamlined migration experience, saving time, reducing complexity, and accelerating your journey to the cloud. In this video, we'll modernize a .NET University Management app by migrating its on-premises SQL Server database to Azure SQL Database with managed identity. In Visual Studio, I have the application open. It uses an on-prem SQL Server to save student information, and teachers can upload files to local file system. Let's start with the assessment. A report is generated to show potential scenarios to be migrated to Azure. I'll work on the first scenario and migrate the app to use Azure SQL DB instead of the on-prem SQL service, using managed identity for connection. This will also resolve the local credential issue as well. The Copilot first generates a plan and reports progress for this migration task. The plan looks good, and I'll instruct the agent to start the migration task. Here we see the Copilot replace the DB connection to Azure SQL DB with managed identity in connection string. The Copilot then proceeds and makes code changes to ensure it's compatible with Azure SQL DB and Microsoft Data Client. Additional code changes are made to ensure proper connection processing and exception handling. The Copilot now attempts to build the project with these new changes, and we see the build has failed. Looks like the failure is due to missing namespace, and Copilot added the missing pieces as part of the build fix loop process. More errors are found, and the Copilot will continue to fix any build error. After 3 iterations, we see the build is now successful. The first migration task is complete, and Copilot has updated the progress tracker file. GitHub Copilot app modernization for .NET streamlines the migration of .NET apps to Azure using AI to assess, plan, execute, and iteratively resolve build errors, ensuring a secure and successful modernization journey.
all right. So that is what I like about that is it's the same pattern we just saw.
For a faster way to migrate your .NET apps.
What's going on here? Okay, there it is. Okay, so when I talked to Jessie on the team, she put together a survey. So I'd love for you, or if you get to this later on your project or whatever, we'd love input on this. Again, this is a great time where we're building tools and we want to we can make changes and improve them as we go forward. So this is the modernization experience. So I showed you previously the upgrade experience, and this is the modernization one. And yeah, as we talk about it, we're like, yeah, this is confusing, and we can improve this. So hopefully these merge and combine into a unified or pretty But what I like already is that it is the same pattern, right? So we've got kind of the general approach is, hey, it's not just a completely unknown problem. We're not just going to say, hey, use Copilot and have fun. We know something about how upgrading and modernizing works. So we put some structure on it, and we have recommendations on hey, here's how you should go about these sorts of things. So a lot of these things are done actually using recipes that are prompt files. And so we'll go through and we'll say, hey, here's a common problem. We'll create a prompt for it. And so that's how it works through some of these things. Some of these prompt files or recipes are generated from things that Microsoft teams internally, hey, we have to go through 1,000 services and we hit this problem on 100 of them. Let's create a recipe for it, right? So just kind of as I wrap up, and then I can take a couple of questions. We've got .NET Conf as announced. That's coming up. We'll have more on all this sort of stuff. There's a session survey. This was, of course, your favorite session at VS Live, and I thank you for it. Do we have any wrap-up questions here? And I know, first of all, I will also, like, my email is john.galloway@microsoft.com. You can ping me afterwards. You can also, like, you're at Microsoft now, and this is a great place to find someone's neck to wring if you need to. But let's go with a question here.
I just curious, something that, is there any ability to interject or add or modify the prompts during iterate the upgrade or modernizing process of Copilot? So, for example, that we keep talking about developer experience moving towards AI automation.
Yeah.
So getting generated PR, then getting generated list changes that are made, and not just going transmetro out, figure out the page, thousands of files. Do that also.
So I'm not, and that's a great question. And now I'm like, oh, I should ask them that earlier when I was talking to the PM. I'm not certain how much you can change. Like that would be an example, like this gentleman was saying, of getting into that markdown and saying, this is how I want you to do this portion of it. And I totally want to play with that and see now. So I'm not certain how that works. You could also go through a portion, stop, and then do it on your own. Another thing, as you alluded to, is using GitHub and assigning issues to the GitHub what is it, SRE, and or SWE, and having it work through those things too. So yeah, that's a great, and just general, that sounds like good general feedback for me to ask the team about, is like some definition on what can we get in there and change in those prompts.
We can add the markdown as well.
Yeah.
Like that.
Okay. That sounds great. Thanks. Yep.
So we have a development framework of application.
Yeah.
We posted it in Azure. It's on the Azure. That.
Yeah.
So when we do that incremental upgrade to the development code, how does that work and like the Azure apps? So you really use up the Azure?
Yeah. So so it does work in Azure, and you can have, basically you can have, because YARP is your single point coming in, that's the only thing you need to expose to the internet. And then internally you can have network to network communication between the two, and it's a SignalR connection between the two. So you basically can have two apps running. I'm not sure what the exact technical way you would set it up, but I know that it is designed in order to support that. So yeah, great question. Yeah. Other questions? Yeah.
You have a dog to indicate the background to show how you added upgrade it before one to time. There's good material with their I wonder what's the original? Yeah, but
what is the original?
let me just swing on that workflow at visual and they'll
Yeah. Do you mean the diagram I was showing? Yeah. Okay. So
sort of what
yeah.
what is art? Where is that? Okay, this will well.
So this is the original where everything is going to a framework app, right?
But then like one
Then the next one is
it's about that
yeah.
topic.
Yeah. So the idea basically this is empty and this is all your stuff and you're just moving everything over. So yeah. Thanks for the great questions. This is obviously a huge topic. There's like, I've thought every time we should do like a whole day workshop or something on that. But we definitely know that this is really important as a scenario, and we want to make it so that you can get on the newer things, and hopefully these newer tools can help you. I'll bring up, just as I'm closing, I'll bring up those two. I think I have so they're just out on the marketplace. There's that.
I mean, it's the preview, so everybody can
Yeah, you can get this today. You can, right now, you could download it. So this is the app modernization. And then the other one is the upgrade for .NET.
So,
All right. Thanks, folks.
yeah.